Welcome to section 3.2. We're going to be talking about energy flow, and there's this flow of energy throughout the biosphere. And remember, our characteristics of life indicate that things use energy. They take in energy for that. So let's start off at the beginning. So the first part is the main source of energy for life on Earth is the sun. So our sun, this is our one. So we're getting energy that's coming down here and helping out the Earth. However, of all the energy that reaches the Earth, only about 1% of it is used by living things. That's a pretty small number if we think of the amount of energy that is coming from the sun. But recognizing that only 1% of that is actually being used by living things. So we're going to now move into the next level in the energy flow. All right, the kind of first level after the sun, so remember we get our sun is like providing our energy, then it's got to go somewhere. So it goes to our autotrophs. And autotrophs, we kind of discussed this in class already, so hopefully this is familiar. These are plants, some algae, certain bacteria that have the ability to capture energy from sunlight or other chemicals in order to produce food for themselves. And these autotrophs make up that first level of energy when we're talking about getting energy from the sun. So another thing that we talked about was producers. So let's move on to the next slide and see what those are. Producers. This is any organism with the ability to create their own food either from chemicals or capturing energy from sunlight. Producers are essential to the flow of energy through the biosphere. And again, lots of times they're going to be kind of a component of autotrophs. So you might see auto. Okay, so our autotrophs, producers would be a subset of our autotrophs. And they're generally going to be that first step as well. And they're super important because they're going to provide energy to other things. So we've covered autotrophs. A component of autotrophs would be producers. And we'll move on to the next one. All right, so when we talk about producers and autotrophs, how do they get their energy from the sun? So the main process by which these producers get their energy is called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the use of light energy to power chemical reactions that convert carbon dioxide and water into oxygen and energy-rich carbohydrates, such as sugars. So we have our little example down here of the chemical reaction for photosynthesis. So we start with carbon dioxide. You need 6 carbon dioxide and 6 water, and you're getting this light to produce sugar and oxygen. Again, that's a benefit for us, not being producers or autotrophs. There's specific needs that we have, and these producers are going to help us out with that. So getting energy from the sun, so this is really how producers do that. How producers get energy. Okay? So there's another way that autotrophs or producers can get energy. We have to think about life without light. So there are some aspects, some places in the world, in the biosphere, that don't have life. So how do those autotrophs or producers continue to survive and get the energy that they require? Well, another one is when light is not available, must rely on chemicals to gain their energy. So these are chemicals. So we have photosynthesis, now we have chemosynthesis. And you think of chemicals and chemo. That's the difference. And it's just this process of using chemical energy to produce carbohydrates. So a lot of this is, one example could be deep sea vents releasing water and chemicals from the crust. So those autotrophs or producers that are very deep in the ocean are going to be around these kind of vents, and that's where they're getting their chemicals and often sometimes heat to create kind of their energy or generate their energy from these chemicals. So you have photosynthesis and chemosynthesis for producers and autotrophs. All right, as we continue on the flow of energy, so we started with our happy little sun, and then we went to the autotrophs, and now we are on to the consumers or the heterotrophs. I'm just going to abbreviate that, but that's kind of our flow of energy. We label these as consumers. They're also called heterotrophs, and these are any organism that must rely on something else to get their energy and food. Consumers, again, they're known as heterotrophs. That's what I just wrote that up there. The main way that energy is transferred is by eating another organism. So there's 4 types that we're going to kind of talk about, and oftentimes you'll hear of 3 different types or 5 different types. This can vary from biologist to biologist, book to book, that type of thing. We're going to talk about 4 different types, and then we're going to include kind of a subset of one of those types. Alright, so when we talk about the 4 different types of consumers, there's 4 different types, and again, these are based off they have to eat something else to get their energy. So you have the carnivores, they're going to eat, they're going to eat meat or other animals, so snakes, dogs, owls. Omnivores eat both other animals and plants, so these would be humans, bears, crows. Herbivores eat only plants, and again, we're looking at they eat cows, caterpillar, deer, that type of thing. So the final one, the detritivores, these are going to eat dead or decaying matter. Examples of these would be mites, earthworms, and crabs. Now there's another one on here, decomposers, and this is one that probably most of you are familiar with. And the difference in here is they really work at breaking down organic matter, and this would be bacteria and fungi, so things like mushrooms. So I think one of your class members asked during our lab, like, well, could we put a mushroom in there? Would that be considered a decomposer? And that would be an example of it. So the main thing with these is pretty much the detritivores and the decomposers kind of fall into the same realm in the sense that they're eating the dead or decaying matter, kind of breaking down matter and go into that decomposer realm. So detritivore is what your book would call kind of almost like the bigger one, eating the dead or decaying matter, and then the decomposer is kind of almost like a subset for that. On your lab that you did the other day, it just listed the decomposers, so that would be the bacteria and fungi. And we'll talk more about what's expected for this, but really we look at 4 kind of main types, and understanding that the detritivores and the decomposers are often kind of have the same description and are often used interchangeably, but there are just slight little differences for that. This concludes this section of 3.2 notes.